Okay, great. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for attending. Um, I guess a quick programming note, as you might have heard me say before we started recording, it's my supervisor, Kim Woodruff. She was originally supposed to be on here, but she wasn't able to attend. She sends her regrets. And if you're part of the Kim Woodruff fan club, I'm sorry, you're stuck with just me. So this is creating assessments with limited tools. I'm an instructional designer at Manhattan College, which, if you don't know, is a small Catholic college located not in Manhattan. We're actually in the Bronx. But because we're small, because budgets are tight, we often find ourselves not being able to support a full um, a full version or a site license of a lot of the tools that we wish we could support. And so that leaves us with needing to sort of make do or find ways to create high quality assessments using limited versions of tools. So that's sort of um, where this came from. So first of all, I'm going to be doing a lot of the participation on Padlet. So you can just sort of type in that link on the screen if that's easier for you, tinyurl slash qm-east 2020, or there's a QR code there, or I'm going to post a link directly into the chat if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. All right, so I just posted a link directly to the Padlet in the chat. And as you heard, you're going to need to copy and paste that directly into a browser. So I'm actually going to switch over to Padlet just for a moment before we really start talking about this. Just in case anyone hasn't used Padlet, it's an awesome tool, by the way. But just in case anyone's not familiar with Padlet, let me give you sort of the 30-second lesson on it. So here's the Padlet that we're working on, and it's sort of dead simple to use. If you want to, you can go down to the lower right-hand corner and use this plus button, which turns into a pencil. Or you can just double-click anywhere in the field to create a post where you can give it a title. And it says write something, ... So there you go. I'm going to be sort of inviting people to make relatively simple posts, but if you, just so you know, you can upload items and create links. There's a whole enormous number of things that you can put into a post on Padlet. And when you're done, just click anywhere outside your post, and then you can even move it around. I'm going to be asking you to come back to the posts that you make to add some content. So to do that, you can hover your cursor over it, click the pencil, which will give you back to editing mode. And from hovering over it, you can also do things like change the color of it if you'd like to make it your favorite color, your school color, or something like that. But for right now, I'm going to delete that. And I'm hoping that by the end of this session, this Padlet is going to be a resource for everyone. We're all going to be sharing some material. So hopefully you can all come back later and use that Padlet as a resource. Okay, but back to the presentation. Let's start it sort of for real now. Okay, so here's sort of in greater detail of where this came from. Sorry, let me remove the happy face. There we go. So what this comes from is a situation in which I know I find myself, and I'm guessing a lot of you find yourselves also, where you hear about or discover some tool which you think is really awesome. And you think, oh, I could use this in so many great ways. My students would really be engaged by this. It's easy for my instructors to use, all the rest of it. Then you find out how much it costs to have all those great features and all the bells and whistles. And so then you respond in one of two ways. You either are unwilling to pay that amount for whatever reason, or you are simply unable to pay that amount for whatever reason. Luckily, the tool in question has a free version of it. And so this free version, however, is going to be limited in some way. So now that we find ourselves at this point, how do we sort of respond to that? So in the Padlet, I'm going to do this too. If you would, please make a post. If you have more than one tool, like one post per tool, what sort of limited tools have you used, and give its name as the title and just maybe a one-sentence description of what it does, so that people can sort of become somewhat familiar with it. I'm going to do that myself in the Padlet. Awesome. Oh, and I love that people are even changing the color. Thank you. I'll change the color of mine too, just for fun. Make mine yellow so I can find them easily. Okay, I saw someone in the chat, but I'm having trouble accessing it.
Well, hopefully everyone's there. I went ahead and put the link back in there, but type in the chat if you're having trouble.
Yeah, it seems like we have 5 people so far on the Padlet, and I believe we have 10 attendees. Okay. All right, I'm going to assume that if you haven't posted in the Padlet already, that you are either having trouble with it, or maybe you are on, I know if maybe you're on on like an iPad or something, it might be difficult to switch back and forth. So let's just go from there. We'll be coming back to the Padlet though. And like I said, I'm hoping that even if you aren't able to contribute to the Padlet, that this will still be sort of the resource that you can use going forward. Okay, so now we have what tools we've used and just sort of a brief description of what they do. So what I want to focus on is sort of this last step here. Okay, we found this free tool. What do we do with the free tool? How do we respond to the free and limited, I should say? So how do we respond to that? So there are different kinds of limitations, and at least in my experience, they sort of fall into one of these three broad categories. Either they limit the number of products that you can produce in some way, whether that is, you can produce only so many, polls in a polling software or something like that. They limit the features that are available in the free version. So there's some sort of part of the tool that you can get with the full version, but is unavailable with the free version. Or there's some sort of limitation in terms of an expiration, sort of the 30-day trial or 14-day trial or something like that. So go back into the Padlet, and one person might have already done this, but describe the way in which the free version of your tool is limited. And again, I'll sort of do that myself with the tools that I'm suggesting. Okay, almost got everybody, almost. Okay. I don't know who entered Kahoot. Can I don't know off the top of my head what that limitation would be, but if you entered Kahoot into the Padlet, enter how it is limited, because I know that's been a popular tool, especially with my kids' teachers. I have two kids in elementary school, and man, do their teachers love Kahoot. All right, so we'll come back to that. All right, great. So we've talked about how the tool is limited. And so I've sort of already described my personal favorite limited tools. A product limited called Storyboard That, where students create comic strips. A feature limited tool called Sutori, which creates timelines. And I'm going to demonstrate all of these, by the way, just so you have a better idea of what they do. And Clarify is hands down like probably my favorite software in my job. It makes creating tutorials absolutely simple. So, actually, let me demonstrate those before we get too far. So, oops. Sorry, I'm trying to make the, there we go. Okay, so this is storyboard that. It only allows you to create 2 comic strips per week. Let me show you what it does though. Here's an example. And so this was actually a comic strip that was created as an assignment in one of our online courses. Typically, this instructor would tell her students, oh, well, tell me about some sort of situation where you realized that forgiveness was important. And so as she took her course and changed it into an online course, she decided to change it. And instead, she made it an assignment where the students were just to describe just sort of a situation. It wasn't something that had to happen to them. And they were to use storyboard that to create it. So the nice thing about this is the students, it feels a little less like work, right? They're, instead of just writing something because they're so used to writing papers, they can instead create it as a comic strip. It's fun to pose the people and everything. It's fun to sort of think up situations, and they have sort of free license to be a little more creative with the kind of situations that they're describing. It can also be used for something like plotting, actually storyboarding a video. It's been used in one of our business professors uses it as a way of creating a product pitch. It's great if you want to have sort of the students are reading a bunch of authors, and the authors want to be sort of in conversation with one another, sort of conceptually. Well, now you can have them literally in conversation with one another. And let me start a blank one. Oops, should have clicked this. So basically, you can see up here, there's an enormous number of backdrops. This is just the ones that they have for town. They have entertainment. They also have historical backdrops, US history. That was some Native American backdrops, mythical and futuristic. So an enormous number of backdrops that you can have. Here we go. Here we're in Hobbit Town, and then you can bring in characters. Let's just bring this person in. Very easy to change their hair, skin, eyes, the color of their clothes. You can edit the pose. So he's gesturing to something, or he's holding his face for some reason and such. So there's a great deal of flexibility. Even the characters go from have historical options and mythological options. You can also change the layout to include a title on the top, a description on the bottom, or even both, title and description. But like I said, this is limited. It's actually limited in two ways. First of all, it's limited in that the students can only create 2 comic strips per week. It's also limited in that you can't create a comic strip with more than 6 panels. Whereas with the paid version, you can create as many as you want, and you can create with as many panels as you want. Sutori is a tool that we've used. It creates timelines, sort of bare bones Facebook style timelines. So here, for example, is the Cold War timeline. It allows you to create a banner up at the top. Then you can create a title and then headings. And then below each heading, you can have, in the free version, a picture and some text to go along with it. Like this. With the paid version, you're allowed to have anything you can think of instead of just images. It's also, you can have polls, you can have little discussions, you can have videos, but in the free version, it's just the images. And it's also kind of nice because you can also come here, you can create classes, even in the free version, you can create classes with your students. They can share their timelines with you. They can share them with each other, and they can also be used to present. So here I can click present. My poor computer is probably choking right now. There we go. All right, so now we have the title, the author. This was a public one, but this woman or man created it. And then here's the heading, and then it goes through each of the images. So it's a nice way to create a very simple sort of presentation, but it's just limited in the features that it offers. Okay, and last but not least, like I said, my favorite software ever, and unfortunately it's been discontinued, so I'm holding on tightly to the version that I did buy. It's a software called Clarify, which is awesome for creating tutorials. Basically, you just open it up, you go through and make a series of screenshots. I don't think it's going to work with the screen sharing on, but you create a bunch of screenshots all in a row. Let's try it just for fun. Just like that. Then you can bring in another screenshot. You can annotate with numbers if you'd like, telling people where to click. You can do, of course, arrows and all the rest of it. You can include a title for the step, and then a more detailed paragraph explaining the step. And then it even has custom templates. So we have one that has like our school colors on it and our logo and everything. Okay. So those are my personal favorite limited tools, and I put those in the Padlet. So how do we sort of respond to these limitations? So now, personally, I kind of feel that, a response to a limitation should sort of should have a shape. It is more than just a workaround. The idea is not that you've been given this limitation and we're just going to, find some way to make do. We're just going to find some way to work around the limitation. We're better than that, right? I mean, I think that it's possible to have a kind of attitude toward this sort of challenge here, is that let's not jury rig something, let's create something that is a high quality assessment because of its limitations, not in spite of its limitations. It should be sort of a pedagogical, the limitations themselves should be a pedagogical opportunity. And so also, and this might seem a little odd, but I also feel that any sort of response to the limitations or a sort of overall strategy of approaching the limitations should respect the tool's creators. And um, I'll go into detail a little bit more about what I mean by that later, but just the idea is that um, I don't want to feel that I am taking advantage of the tool's creators' goodwill by creating some sort of assessment that um, uses the limitations in a pedagogically sound way. Um, but like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. So again, like here are the limitations that we talked about above. I talked about earlier: the number of products produced, the features available, and the time before the expiration. Um, Actually, you know what? Let me go through my own before we all jump on Padlet. Um, so overall, I think that um, the strategy overall is that to take advantage of the limitations involves an embedding of the assessment that uses the tool within some sort of larger strategy. So, for example, with Storyboard That, um, the students can only create 2 comic strips in a given week. So, how do we take that limitation, or I should say, like two comic strips of either 3 or 6 panels? How do we turn that limitation into an advantage? Well, I think that the one thing you can do is if you have a limitation on the number of products the students produce, you can have them just turn in a version of that product and then go back and edit that product again. So for example, I can start off with a 3-panel comic strip in Storyboard That. The students produce that. Then I create another assessment or a second part of the assessment where then they have to add another 3 panels. So they're going from 3 panels to 6 panels. Then I can ask them, okay, now add descriptions. So in the example that I gave, where let me bring it up. So in the example that I gave, where we're telling the story about forgiveness, the assignment can be tell 3 panels only about that sets up the need for forgiveness. And then the students do some more reading about forgiveness. Then they add another 3 panels where the conflict is resolved through forgiveness. And then finally, I can have the student write descriptions down at the bottom where the students are required to bring in content from the readings or the lectures that week. And so they end up creating one product and then changing it at least 2 times along the way. And the only sort of caveat that you have with that, I think, is you need some way of turning them in at each point. And luckily, like pretty much every tool has some way to either the students can share a URL with you, and then you can look at that product at that point in time and grade it, and then have them edit it. Or you can have them save it as a PDF maybe, or take a screenshot and have them upload that. And so even though that PDF or screenshot might not be as well detailed, or might not be as functional as the product on the screen, visiting it online, that can still serve um, as a how do I put this? Some way of like holding them responsible for its state at a given time. So with the limitation of features available, like in that case, that was the, in my example, it was the Satori, where in the free version, they're only allowed to use text and images, whereas in the full version, they're allowed to have like much more rich media that they can put in there. So how do we respond to that limitation? I think in feature limited um, tools, the key is to have the students, or rather to not sort of ignore that lack of feature, but rather to have the students reflect on um, what more would be needed. So for example, in this, we have this timeline of the Cold War, and we're only allowed to see images. So we can shine a light on those limitations and ask the students, what more do you need to tell this story? And I mean, in this particular case, depending on, I guess, depending on the exact context of this assignment, these students may say, oh, well, like I really want to hear the actual voices of people who lived through this. I want to see those people where they are now. I want to hear what the news reports were saying then. And so when they see that is a richer way to explain something, and they can come up with, and I mean that's sort of a gimme, right? Like, oh well, it's richer if it's multimedia. It's not just that, but like exactly why is it richer? And then they could perhaps go on to find those additional resources, and maybe not be able to put them in this tool, but to be able to still have them submitted in some additional way. So unlike the last tool where the idea was, well, let's take this limitation, sort of like stretch it out over time. Here, it's about sort of stretching out what the students perceive as necessary to complete like the larger goal of the assessment. Okay, and finally, time. For time limited things, I think again it is sort of, it's about embedding an assessment in a larger assessment strategy. So if you're requiring them to use a particular tool that they only have, say, 14 days to use, and you wish they had it for longer than 14 days, then do as much as possible before and after the actual use of that tool. Before the tool, they could do things like look at tutorials, and you can give them very basic sort of tests for understanding. And you can use like Edpuzzle or PlayPosit, something like that, or you can just give them a like quick check for understanding test. You can have them do pre-work, like having them mock up the product that they're going to be creating, or you can have them give some sort of proposal for the use of the tool. So you have all this work that comes before the actual use of the tool. And again, it's not about just having a workaround and just sort of like getting as much as you can out of the tool. It's about increasing the sort of pedagogical footprint of that tool, because you're preparing them to use the tool in the way that will do best for your pedagogical goals, your learning outcomes. But also by doing things like this pre-work, tutorial work, and such, that's going to ensure that they are using the tool correctly, they're using it efficiently, and they are just sort of using it to its best effect. And then you can also add assessments after also. So for example, once they create the item, you can have them reflect on that item and do peer review or something like that. Okay, so now I've talked for a whole long time talking about like my personal responses to like a tool's limitations, but if you would go into the Padlet and think about how you might use your selected tool, or how you might respond to the limitations of your particular tool, or how you have. And I'll do the same for my tools in here also.
Blair, there's one question that seems particularly applicable right at this juncture.
Okay.
Carrie Forsyth asks, are there alternatives to clarify that haven't been discontinued?
The closest thing I've seen is called Snagit. It's by TechSmith, which is the same company that creates Camtasia. They have a, they have, a, they have it's in some respects a little, it's more featureful and less featureful than Clarify. Clarify is nice because you just make a whole bunch of screenshots all at once, so you just do what you're trying to do and you create your tutorial as you go along. So it's like, I'm about to click here, let me make a screenshot. Now I'm about to click here, take a screenshot, and just go through that whole way. But then the screenshots sort of are fixed. They are as they are. There's no way to like really change them. You can annotate them, but you can't, that's kind of a pain to change them. Whereas with Snagit, it is primarily a screen capture tool. So you can snag a screen, and then you can actually edit the screenshot to make it a little more informative. So for example, like we use Moodle a lot. And so there's plenty of times where I have to tell them like, click here and then click save. And so I have this like enormous screenshot, and it's nice to sort of, one thing that you can do easily in Snagit, but not easily in Clarify, is cut out the middle of that screenshot. So you just have like at the top where they're supposed to click on something, and then down at the bottom, you can show the save button all in one screenshot rather than having to do multiple. And if anyone else has any other information about tutorial tutorial creation software, please post it either in the Padlet or in the chat or something, because I stay up at night sometimes thinking about the day that Clarify will no longer be available. Already it's complaining that it doesn't run well on my Mac. Okay. We only have about 8 minutes left, don't we?
Yes, you're right
So,
about that.
all right. So, so let's go back, because I do want to talk a little bit about the like tool creator thing. Okay, so we talked about the sort of like step here. So let's talk about step 3, right? The step where you decided or realized or whatever that you either were unwilling or unable to pay for the full version, excuse me, the full version of the tool. I said at the beginning that I thought that a limitation, or at least an overall strategy of how to respond to limitations, and maybe this goes beyond just like the mere creation of assessments, an overall response to these limitations should respect the creators of the tools. And what I mean by that is just, look, I love all these tools. I mean, sometimes we have like way too many to choose from, right? We have this enormous number of tools that we can use to help our students learn. And those are the product of a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And I want to respect that. And I want to make sure that if I think a tool is high quality, I think that, it's fair to expect to pay for it. So this is why I bring up this sort of like step 3 here is, it's easy to just say, oh, wow, well, that tool is really expensive, I'm not going to pay for it. But I would invite you to sort of think about, well, expensive in what way? And you say you are either unable or unwilling to pay for it. Why are you unable or unwilling to pay for it? Not saying that you're wrong, but just reflect on why that is the case. So for example, it just may be that just the structure of your institution is such that you're just not in charge of purchasing. You can't do that sort of thing. Or maybe it could be that, you simply don't have the budget for a full version. Or it may be that, frankly, you think that it's too expensive in the sense that you think the company is not charging a fair price for it. The other two cases, where you're thinking that like, well, it's a fair price, but I'm just not going to pay it, or I can't pay for it. Or you may think like, well, that's not even a fair price, so like that's why I'm not paying for it. So things that you can do, I think, to respect the tool's creators, I think there's a few different things that you can do as sort of an overall response to limitations. First of all is just be honest about why you think hard, about why you are not you're unable or unwilling to pay for the full version, and periodically review your needs and its cost. And because over time, your needs may change, the cost may change, and so it may turn out that, that tool that you thought, a long time ago is too expensive, now is actually a good value. Um, if you think it's too expensive, tell them. Tell them you think it's too expensive. Ask them for a quote for the full version just to make sure, and then tell them, hey, this is too expensive, because that is feedback. That is, personally, I think that is showing respect to the creator, that, you are, I tried, I did my best, I did my due diligence. It's a great tool, but I think it's too expensive. I think you're overcharging for it. And hopefully the tools creators would respond to that, and lower the price. Or if not, hey, at least you did sort of your due diligence. And finally, if you can't yourself pay for a full version, share with others what you are doing with the limited version, because some of them might decide, hey, like those people can't pay for it. It doesn't make sense for them, but it certainly makes sense for us. Our needs are different. Um, and that's why I wanted to sort of go through all of those tools that we had used at our school, and why I gave the quick demo, because it doesn't make sense for us to pay for them, but I think they're still quality tools, and I think that um, they the creators do deserve a fair price if it makes sense for someone else. So yes, I'm going to tell people these are tools I think are really good, and maybe if I can't buy it, maybe someone else can. So that's sort of the end of my spiel, but I'd like to know if you guys have any questions, which you can type by clicking the little Q&A icon with the word bubbles.
There are none in there right now, but we'll wait just a moment for those to come on in. So
Okay.
please feel free. And in the meantime, I do want to say thanks to Blair. That was a lot of great practical information. I wasn't aware of most of the tools that you shared about, and I really appreciated that you kind of walked us through that.
Happy to help.
It does not look like we have any questions, so I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay. And so everyone, please